welcome everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo. The political arena is getting quite interesting, intriguing I should say, as political parties begin and conclude their primaries for the emergence of candidates ahead of the 2023 general elections. This of course is in line with the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022. We know winners are already emerging, some names are staging a comeback, a return, new ones are also popping up, while some have lost out already. But beyond the results, something sticks out like a sore thumb, and that is the issue of monetization of politics. And maybe I should use a euphemism here by saying financial mobilization of delegates. However, I'd like to state quickly here that some relevant authorities are yet to confirm or arrest anyone over that matter or the matter, and but the truth is that we're not naive, and if we're being honest, the issue of money politics is not new in Nigeria. But the question is, rather than fizzle out, is money becoming the major determinant for who becomes a candidate or who gets elected to fly a party's flag for an election? Well, that's the question that we will be answering. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and celebrate
the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions.
Of course, it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
Let me begin by saying that I am not confirming anything yet, but still I cannot ignore widespread allegations of delegate inducement making the rounds as contenders for political party candidacy slots and make their consultations across states, of course seeking for support. I hear it has literally been a dollar rain. In fact, only this morning I saw a video of one delegate to one of the major primaries showcasing a car he had just acquired after his mobilization fee, to the primaries was paid. Again, NTA cannot verify that claim or any of these, but if this is true and if this is pervasive, then what really has changed in our democratic ethos? Are delegates electing dollars or public-spirited individuals that their parties can then present as options to the voting public? To join me in this conversation is Dr. Akin Fala, a political scientist, and Dr. Stephen Iroro Izu, also a political scientist, and as a matter of fact, they're both lecturers as well in our tertiary institutions. Welcome to Insights, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. So I think I'll begin with you, Dr. Izu. Let us give some historical perspective to this issue, and of course, Dr. Faye, in the course of you would also, I'd like your input on this as well. I'm sure you must have heard of what transpired in 1955 with NCNC and the whole issue of money being funneled into the election. In 1964, NNDP was also accused of collecting kickback for funding its for funds for its campaign. You know what? In Second Republic Nigeria, this same issue subsided. That was when we allegedly had politicians who had breakfast in Lisbon, lunch in Paris, and dinner in California. I can go on and on from the Second Republic to the Third, and of course to the Fourth, and reel out how ingrained this whole issue really is. But tell me something, Dr. Izu. At what point was politics really different in Nigeria, when it wasn't a mix of someone offering, the other person purchasing, haggling, and bargaining the issue of cost of votes? Has there been a time things have really been different?
Okay, thank you very much, and good day, Nigerians, and of course, Dr. Falaye. And I just want to begin by stating that politics generally in Nigeria has been characterized by several factors ranging from primordial sentiment, ethnicism, religious bigotry, and so on and so forth. But this idea of using money, to curry votes or curry supports, is increasingly becoming alarming. Now, as you have rightly pointed out, the money issue in our politics has been on even in the pre-independence era, but it is gaining momentum now. And the question we should ask is, why is it gaining momentum? Why is there so much visibility, of this issue now? Why are people so emboldened, to want to collect money, before they could support?
Of course, Dr. Izu, sorry to butt in here, but of course we're going to talk about that and look into that. But I would like for you, and very much so, to comment on the historical perspective of this whole issue. Is it possible that our leaders, our First Republic leaders, perhaps even the ones before then, may have set the precedent, or just may have started this whole trend?
Yes, of course. Now, you know that if you go by the statement that was given, shortly after the Unzogu coup of 1966 January, one of the things he pointed out was that their target was to rid Nigeria of the profiteers, the public profiteers, those who have made Nigeria a patrimony that they could share among themselves. That means, monetization of Nigerian politics has been on, and I think I've always argued, even though I am a patriot, to Nigeria, I've always argued that, our nationalist leaders who fought for the independence of the Nigerian state didn't do much in trying to establishing a very firm foundation that could serve as a moral, ethical guide, to future leaders. Now, these self-restraints, was not adequately established so as to deter, people from engaging in ostentatious living and so on and so forth. Now, in the early 60s, when somebody like Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore came to Nigeria, at that time, Nigeria had so much prospect, to outrun, America, even in development. But when Lee Kuan Yew and his delegation, came to Nigeria, one of the things they observed, and as stated in his book, Singapore from Third World to First World, is the fact that he saw Nigerian leaders, living flamboyantly, living ostentatiously, living, luxuriously, and he said to his delegation that we really don't have anything, to learn from this country. Let's go back to our country and go and devise our own path to our own development. That means this idea, of trying to monetize the entire political architecture, has been there, and the foundation was laid in the colonial time and was sustained in the First Republic, and that structure, keeps resonating, on our daily, political life in this country. So
great for creating. Thank you for creating this context. Let's quickly bring in Dr. Falaye, and of course, Dr. Falaye, you've listened into to what Dr. Izu has said. And do we have Dr. Falaye? Yeah, sure, we have Dr. Falaye.
I'm listening.
Dr. Falaye, please, let's get your take very quickly on the historical perspective to monetization of politics in Nigeria.
Well, if you look at it historically, the money and politics in Nigeria, they has always been together. And the most unfortunate part of it is it is getting better or getting worse. When we assume, undoubtedly, that is getting worse. Let me say this first. Let me quote the former Emir of Kano, who said that Nigeria is an abnormal society, and in an abnormal society, you cannot afford to be neutral. It's all Nigerians. What is happening today? We cannot afford to be neutral. Regardless of the consequences, we have to speak up. We have to speak up. It is our right to demand a change in this system because the institution is so weak. People can do things almost unapologetically and get away with it. And that is what is happening. The United States, they are copying. You know, there's money in politics in the United States. It's almost the same, but they have their own regulation.
Sorry, Doc. You will continue with your line of thoughts presently. But I understand that we have Professor Sam Egu also online waiting to join us. If we can have him just say very quickly, he's online trying to also join us. He would like to be part of this conversation. I just got some notice saying it's online. Please, Dr. Falaye, please continue while we await Professor Sam Egu to also join us. Please continue.
Oh, okay, what I'm saying is again, when you look at, we copy from the United States. Somebody said that money is the cocaine of American politics. That is how serious it is. But in an American politics, they have regulation. I cannot imagine people displaying dollar in a country that the currency is naira. And people that are vying for the leadership position of this country, spending dollars, displaying dollar, that is an act of incivism. It's unpatriotic, so to say the least. So to go back to your question,
Dr. Falaye, does it really matter that it's dollar that they are spending? I can understand dollarizing the primaries. If they were spending naira, would that have made it any better?
You see what?
If they were spending naira, would that have made it morally right or legally right?
No, not at all. You know, because the law itself is not setting a limit. I can imagine to asking to get the form to participate in the presidential election for over, I don't know how many millions. I mean, you are depriving others. How many people can afford that? And ironically, all of them, I say, oh, a group of people bought the form for me. And these are a group of millionaires, well-to-do people. They can't afford to buy it themselves. And who are they kidding?
Well, Dr. Falaye, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Let's see if we can bring in Professor Egu. But very quickly, before we go ahead, I would like to play a video of the former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Untitled Chapter, and how he described this entire scenario. Please, can we have that video so our guests can react to what he said?
Direction of becoming a plutocracy rather than a democracy. You know, plutocracy is basically government of the rich for the rich by the rich. You know, imagine the National Assembly altered the Electoral Act to increase the threshold of how much a candidate can spend for election finance. You know, that is something that we should all have opposed. Regrettably, we were too busy opposing the issue of electronic transmission and so on that we lost focus. We didn't pay sufficient attention to what they were trying to do because they now smuggle the issue of huge financial outlays required of candidates. And then in addition to that, many political parties, especially the so-called big ones, now put huge amounts as nomination fees, which excluded women, excluded young men, excluded people with disability, you know, and that is even at the level of entrance, people who want to contest. So you can't even contest because they have made it so difficult for people to contest. And then they will now come and also use a lot of money for the election. So it's unfortunate. This is one area where attention has to be focused in the next cycle of electoral reforms to the electoral legal framework.
By the way, gentlemen, the current leadership of INEC has also decried, the situation. We've talked about that plenty of times. What we've tagged dollarization of the primaries. Your take very quickly, Dr. Izu, on what the former INEC chairman has said.
Yeah, of course, I completely agree with Professor Untitled Chapter. You know, the idea of transmitting or transforming, you know, our democracy into kleptocracy, government of the thieves, by the thieves, and for the thieves. You know, and when democracy gets to such extreme negativity, that means the citizens, they are going to pay a huge price, for that on the long run, because it appears very clearly, that people are not mindful of tomorrow, of Nigeria, of the future of Nigeria tomorrow. They're only mindful of their own stomach, for today. The delegate are supposed to be people of conscience, supposed to be people, who have been reposed on, trust, from the people. They are supposed to be a conduit pipe, for choosing capable and credible, standard bearers for the parties, not conduit pipe for siphoning, or for enriching themselves, for favoring their nets, and so on and so forth. I completely agree with him because, and it is an alarming situation, because in a country where the poverty rate is increasing, unemployment rate is increasing, inequality, social inequality is increasing, and all manner of things, mortality rate is increasing, people are not concerned about capability and credibility of personality that will occupy offices, that will bring about holistic change, that will affect, the lives of citizens of Nigeria, but they are only concerned about their own stomach. I think it is absolutely unfortunate, and at this point in time in the trajectory of Nigeria's history, we don't need people like this. People like this, there should be laws that will criminalize this act, and not just criminalizing this act, but that will make sure that the people who engage in this such act are, brought to public shame.
Yes.
Public shame. So it is.
Dr. Izu, incidentally, there are laws, and of course, we will come to the issue of laws and whether or not these laws are adequate, and whether or not it is the issue of implementation. There are laws, but and Dr. Falaye, just before I come to you, let me confirm that Professor Sam Egu is with us at the moment. If that is true, Professor Sam Egu would like to welcome you to the program. If you've joined us, we have been speaking for quite a bit. Are you with us, Prof? Are you with us, Professor Egu?
We can see the face, but we can't hear him.
Professor Egu, if you are with us, please enable your audio so you can join in this conversation. Would very much like to have you join us in this conversation. Please enable your audio, because we can see,
I can hear. Can you hear me?
Oh, fantastic. Yes, we can hear you. Professor Ego, thank you so much for joining us. We can see part of your face. Do not we're literally seeing your eyeballs. Please just move away a bit from your phone.
Can you?
Yes, please, we can see. So thank you so much for joining us, Professor Egu. We have been speaking at length about them. We actually started our conversation from the historical perspective of monetization of politics in Nigeria, in trying to create a context and just how bad it is. We played, I don't know if you were opportune to hear part of the remarks or the description of the former INEC, your former boss, as a matter of fact, at INEC, describing the situation in the policy.
Yes,
very quickly, can we have your comments on this?
Can it be louder?
Yes, Prof. We wanted to just get your take real quick on the whole issue of monetization of politics. If it's possible, if you can hear us, please just move back a bit from your camera. Move away from it so we can see your face really. This is better. Thank you so much, Prof. Basically, would like your take on the monetization of politics in Nigeria, what people are describing as dollarization of the primaries. What is its implication socially, and economically and politically as well on our politics?
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Prof.
Please go ahead, Prof. We can hear you.
I heard part of the concerns expressed by many of our compatriots, and I actually listened to a substantial part of Professor Tairu Jaga's response. And I think what I have experienced here in Niger is a confirmation of the trends across the country. Well, as we all know, money is the necessary evil of politics. Without money, nothing can be done. But excessive use of money or excessive intrusion of money, including money from infamous sources, can actually undermine democracy. We also know that the foundation for credible election is the transparency of the processes through which parties select their candidates for the main office. So if you go by that logic,
sorry, I'm on a TV
what
program.
happened in the last 2 weeks already spells a doom for the election of 2023. Because what we have seen in this exercise is really a commodification of the votes of delegates. And that those who voted during these primaries didn't have the sovereign power to choose among those contesting for these offices, and therefore took decision of their own sovereign will. These votes were bought, they were purchased, and when you look at the quality of delegates, many of them couldn't even write their names, Then you begin to worry, what is it that we are doing? I think it goes back to one important point that I do know, and that is that by their nature, political parties are not willing to render the process of selecting their candidates open and transparent. There is no willingness to do it. And so, ab initio, once that willingness is not there, what you are going to see is a perversion of that process. And I think the fact that parties delayed primaries from April up to towards the end of the closure of the exercise is a clear testimony of their lack of will to do it openly and transparently. And the way they manage that, has not been quite helpful. And in many cases,
thank you so much for the elements that you've introduced.
There are so many accusations about what people have done that is not proper. So I think that we need to learn a lot of lessons in terms of how to properly organize primaries that are transparent.
Very true. Very true.
To discipline, political parties to follow a particular process. But I think in the main sense of the word, they subverted everything.
Very true, Professor Egu. I want to agree with you there in totality. Political parties are culpable in this process. They've compounded or exacerbated this issue as it is. Dr. Izu, I can understand that you're in your office, and of course you're in the school environment. I can also appreciate that your students are trying to get your attention. But if you would not mind, please, if you just give us a couple of minutes, we'll quickly round off our conversation and allow you return to your students. It appears to be distracting our other panelists. So please, if you would just tell your students to give you a couple of minutes so that we can, you'll get back to them presently. Thank you so much, Dr. Izu. But then, since I have you here already, let's just talk about this whole, concept of, having lots of theory on how politics can take its shape, proper shape, as a decider of the fate of the vast people seeking for development. Okay, so the thing is this, and I know this has come up time and again, but are we heading in any direction, or close to a direction where, where elections should be ideally?
I believe that we have sufficient laws. We have guidelines that should create the credible basis. Of course, election generally is supposed to be the
Please continue, Dr.
The lubricant that oil the wheels of democracy, because once we have defective election, automatically we have defective democracy. You know, it is the credibility of the electoral process that translates into the credibility of the democratic, government that will be installed, in the final analysis. You know, so it is very, very important for us to get the electoral process, very, very correct. If the elections, those who are participating in the elections, do not uphold some moral, ethical standards, that for them to live above board, definitely they are not going to be responsible. They are not going to be responsive to the yearnings of the people. I have had a conversation with somebody, one of my former students, who graduated and done his NYSC, and he was looking for a job. So I say, your brother is a senator. Why not go and meet him? Somebody from your community is the senator representing your senatorial district. Why not go and meet him in the National Assembly? And they said, okay. He went to meet him. He got there, and of course, the man told him that, I don't have any job for you, that this person in our place. They say, yes, go and meet them. I paid them money to get to this place. So you now see that the man does not have any sense of responsibility to the members of his senatorial district, even though he's the one representing them at the Senate. So when election is for cash and carry, when election is for demand and supply purposes, it therefore means that the people who are going to be beneficiaries of the electoral process at the end of the day will not have any sense of responsibility, to the people. And when the people are not benefiting from the democratic process, that means democracy has been killed. It has become plutocracy.
Very, very true. I agree with you again there. Is Dr. Falaye still with us?
Yes, I'm
very quickly, can you jump in here, Dr. Falaye?
Okay, my take about the whole process of electoral system in Nigeria is with all the who's and cries of the absurdity and abnormality of the politics in Nigeria, the critical question we should be asking ourselves is, what is to be done? We are more or less moving in a vicious circle. To my mind and to my knowledge, things are not getting better at all. Understandably, people that are taking money from politicians during these primaries, I don't want to blame them, because it's a sign of poverty in the country. There is poverty in the country. People are suffering in the midst of plenty. It's very unfortunate. And taking money, they consider it as their own dividends of democracy. Politics itself has become more or less an antithesis to development and even democracy itself in Nigeria. It is very unfortunate, I raised the question that, with all the who's and cries of the absurdity of electoral process in Nigeria, what can we do? If Ghana, a very small country, not only even the size of Lagos, can conduct election within a short period of time peacefully and without any major problem, why can't we do it? Does it mean that we don't know what to do, or we don't have the resources to do what we need to do? Of course not. But because there are two forces in this country. Forces that want to perpetuate the status quo because it's very beneficial to them, and for those who want a change. And Nigeria cannot move forward without change. We cannot. What I'm talking about change, I'm not talking within the context of what the politicians are talking about change. No. A profound, fundamental change. Nigeria occupies a strategic position. I look at this country as
Dr. Falaye, sorry to interject, but we can barely see your face anymore. If you just okay. That is a lot better. Yes, I get what you mean, and I get the concept of change that you're talking about. But there's something quite critical that you raised, and that's the issue of will and having institutions in place to achieve set targets. Professor Egu, I'd like to bring you into the conversation at this point, and perhaps just paraphrase the issue that Dr. Falaye just raised. Is it that we do not have the will? Is it that our institutions are not empowered enough? Or is it that we're just not interested to get to where we should be in terms of politics and in terms of elections in Nigeria? Well, Egu, did you get my question?
Yeah, I did.
Please go ahead.
My perspective of the problem is very simple. Election is not essentially about the people.
We seem to be having an issue with your connection there.
It is the game the elites play.
Okay.
And what you have... Oh, my gosh.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. There's definitely a network issue from your end there in Niger. I understand Mina has been having some issues lately, but we will try and bring you into the conversation if the connection permits. Dr. Izu, I'm sure you heard what Dr. Falaye talked about in terms of will. It would seem that Professor Egu is still trying to make his contributions, but if you can hear me, we're having some issues with your connections from Mina. Please, let's just see if it will get better while we have Dr. Izu jump in here and make his comments on the key critical issue raised by Dr. Falaye on somewhat of a poser, I should say, that it would seem that we are just not ready to get it right here, Dr. Izu. Is that the case? Dr. Izu? It would appear that the connections are much worse than I anticipated or that I had assumed. Dr. Falaye, are you still there with me?
Yes, I'm still hearing you.
Okay, you're about the only one still on. So maybe I'll let you land on your thoughts and perhaps let's go along the lines of your earlier assertion that it will seem that as a people and as a community and as an institution as well that we're just not set yet to take Nigeria to where it should be in terms of elections and in terms of politics. Can you land
absolutely, on that? Absolutely. Let me refer to something that Limozuri, who's a renowned African political scientist, said about in the 70s. He compared Nigeria, India, and Brazil, as 2-3 regional powers of the future. He wrote the article in Minority. I will remember the journal. So what he wrote in that thing is that Nigeria, India, and Brazil, we are on the same level. But when you look at the 3 countries today, you cannot compare Nigeria with India. You cannot compare Nigeria with Brazil. Not in any way. Is it again that we don't have the resources? I read in the paper just a few days ago that since 1960, when we got independence, 587 billions had been stolen. No country can develop on that basis. You cannot open any newspaper in Nigeria a day without reading money being stolen. So the question is politics or democratic politics a curse or a blessing to us? If we are moving in a vicious circle, then there is a problem here. People are suffering.
Indeed.
I mean, I put myself within the context of people that I come across. Anytime I go out, I look at faces of people. There is poverty in this country in the midst of plenty.
Yes. Dr. Falaye, I would appreciate if you try and stay still so that you do not move around too much. It's distorting the connections. Okay. But let me quickly, if Professor Egu is with us, is he back? Is he back online?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful, Prof. Okay, so I would, I mean, we've thrown up this whole issue about not being ready as a people and as a country, in spite of institutions that we have. I know we have a social culture of gratification in Nigeria, and that has since mixed with politics. But then, this practice, this monetization of politics, it's illegal. It's not, I mean, it's not even redeemable. And, you know, even as a man, even the delegate, whether it's a man or a woman, knows this is not right. But he or she feels this is the only way that they can get their own share of the national cake, at least from the politicians seeking to get nominated or get elected. The point is, and Dr. Falaye has said this, that he thinks it's poverty. Is it poverty of the mind now, or poverty really in terms of not having resources? And then, but more importantly, how can we change that kind of perception? And I mean, this, and of course, we do know that these delegates are just as culpable and complicit in this whole scenario as a politician involved in vote buying. Prof, please go ahead. Prof, did you get all my question?
Okay, I hope I can be economical. Yes, yeah, I did.
Yes, please go ahead.
We need to start by understanding the political economy of elections. And my point is that elections, not necessarily about the people, it's a part and parcel of the politics of elite bargain. And what it does, from the perspective that I understand it, is that election is the floor of how to develop society. It is about the elite themselves reproducing their interests. And that is why I keep arguing that the elites rule everywhere. But in Africa and in Nigeria in particular, you are dealing with a homicidal ruling elite that has no sense of development and has no sense of leaving anything for the people. So the only way you can change the narrative is to trigger a process of change from below by empowering people, by educating them, so that they can transform our elections into a means of enforcing political accountability instead of simply legitimizing elite rule, which does not service development. And I think we need to understand it very well. Those who take, for them, it is simply a logic for the delegates and citizens. It's simply a logic of saying, this we need to work on our election, not simply as a part of a elite process of bargaining for position, but to become an instrument for citizens to enforce political accountability.
Okay, so very quickly, Dr. Izu, if we can have you for, I see your students are back. Okay, great.
In which democracy.
Professor Egu, sorry, let me just quickly, I mean, and I get the drift, I get what you're trying to say, and I hope our other panelists have been listening in as well. Dr. Izu, did you by chance glean anything from what Professor Egu has talked about? He talked about change just as much as Dr. Falaye spoke about, but he's talking about a more expansive overhaul of the institution. You know, with a deliberate intention of changing things with a bottom-top approach. Do you concur?
Yeah, well, I think that what we need, you know, concurring with what Professor Egu has said, is this moral reawakening moral reawakening. I think apart from the poverty, factor that Dr. Falaye pointed out, I think there is also fundamentally, moral decadence, a crumbling of our moral architecture in this country. I believe that poverty is not a license to misbehave. Poverty should not be a license to engage in acts that are anti-state or anti-social. I think it is just a cheap excuse, to commit, extended crime. So I believe that the major factor that we should look at, is this issue of a moral decadence, a breakdown of our moral, a collapse of our moral fabrics in this country. And I think if we must get that right, all hands must be on deck. Our religious leaders, our traditional rulers, civil society organizations, and even the media, come, to play a major role in trying to, reconscientize, the Nigerian, electorate, the Nigerian citizens, of which the delegates are part of, and of which the politicians are also part of. If we don't get this moral reawakening, moral reconciliation right, we'll keep moving around a circle. There are countries that are as poor as Nigeria, but they don't have this kind of decayed, leadership inclination, like what we're witnessing. How can the same set of delegates collect money from 4 aspirants from the same position? What moral foundation, can they give, explanation can they give to such act of kleptocracy? So I believe that there is a collapse of our moral values. There's a collapse, of ethics, in the Nigerian political, environment, and that must be the basis for overhauling the entire, architecture as it relates to politics, elections, and leadership in Nigeria.
Dr. Falaye, I'd like to have your final words at this point. I mean, going forward, is there any hope that money politics will take a backseat in future electoral considerations? Can a revised electoral act, for instance, help in this regard? Even though we have laws now, and even though we know overhauling the system is a long-term project, but can we perhaps begin a process that engenders our lawmakers to begin this thought process, so that future amendments can not just criminalize this mobilization of the politics, but ensure that these laws are implemented?
Well, my opinion is this, that in a democracy, so to say, people are sovereign. But in the Nigerian context, it's not. We are a semi-sovereign people. That is, the people, the Muslims, they cast their election. Of a fact, one can even conclude that election in Nigeria is more or less shambolic, so to say. So what do we do?
So in your book, in your own book, or in your view, there's no hope, Dr. Falaye?
Well, I'm a Pollyanna. I'm very optimistic that things can change. But before things can change, we have to be conscious of where we are and where we want to go. Do we want to remain a status quo country? The country, the state becoming an elitist cake? Or do we want to, be more inclusive?
Very true.
Everybody participating, have the right to participate? These are critical questions. But if the status quo group, that is group that believes that it's in their interest to perpetuate the status quo because it is their benefit, or we move forward as a group, as a nation, the country cannot move forward as it is. Like I've said, money or even politics itself has become an antithesis to development. When millions and millions are being stolen every day, where is the money for development?
Very true,
Where is the money
Dr.
for development?
Falaye. I'd like
The
to
infrastructure is properly,
I'd like to
hospitals
get
are
the final
properly,
word from Professor
universities are on track,
Egu as well.
everything.
If you're there, going forward, I mean, I know you've talked about that, and you've thrown that up earlier. But are you as optimistic as maybe not because Dr. Falaye is not sounding very optimistic at the moment, but he thinks there's hope still. He thinks there is hope. Dr. Egu, do you feel any different?
Yeah,
Professor Egu, I beg your pardon. Do you feel any different?
I'm quite optimistic. I'm optimistic because true citizenship in this country. The fact that people do not understand the obligation that the state has, towards them, and they are able to do their part in order to hold the state accountable, only, points to the quality of citizenship in this country. We need to put our hands together at public place.
I think we'll just close shop, and I mean draw the curtain in our conversation. Of course, this is an ongoing conversation. I mean, it would succeed beyond the 2023 elections. I'm quite sure about that. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for being part of this discussion. Professor Sam Egu, current resident electoral commissioner for Niger State, Dr. Akin Falaye, a political scientist, and his colleague here in Abuja. Dr. Falaye, of course, is in Lagos, while his colleague, Dr. Stephen Iroro Izu, is here in Abuja. He's of the University of Abuja, Department of Political Science. Is also a political scientist. Gentlemen, I would like to thank all three of you for this, I mean, impactful, insightful conversation. But for the network issues that we've had, I mean, these would have been even better than I mean, in terms of quality, better than what we have now. But of course, we would look for an opportunity and see how we can get all three gentlemen in the studio so we can have a seamless conversation on this issue. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate having you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate.
But just before we go, I'd like to bring us an excerpt on something we did a couple of years ago on the imperatives for national unity and social cohesion. And this is because of recent happenings in Nigeria that reinforces the need for not just the media now, but for us as Nigerians to come together as a people and united with a common front to identify and obey those things that bring us together as a people rather than the things that divide us as people.
The land of hills and coal strives to retain its essence, even as modernization continues to broaden its outlook. In few parts of Enugu State, some ideals have significantly remained the same. They have mostly transcended time and are reminiscent of an era where socio-cultural borders hardly existed. This mosque is symbolic of that period. It was built 22 years before Nigeria gained independence in 1960. But prior to that time, the site where this mosque currently stands and the surrounding areas were mostly settlements for Hausa Fulani migrants from the northern axis of Nigeria.
So you can see the history. And we've been having a lot of intermarriage. Like me now, I'm as old as my age. I was born and brought up here. Our parents and those before them.
4 generations of Seiki Sambo's family have left the Hausa Fulani community in Enugu State. Interestingly, the migrant Hausa community settled in this part over a century ago.
As long as I know, for more than 200 years. we've been have that relationship that is cordial. And for me to buttress that, I would say the first mayor of Enugu in 1956 was a Fulani man from Sokoto by name Umaru Atine. So you can see from where I'm going.
It is apparent that this generation of settlers draws inspiration from the past. Not only do they owe their presence here to their forebears, they have amiably integrated into the larger Enugu society.
We are one family here. There is spirit of love is high, respect for one's religion, respect for our culture, respect for our tradition have been so wonderful.
Ile-Ife, the ancestral home of the Yoruba race, with a history going back 10,000 BC, was one of the many kingdoms that existed long before the first European explorer came to these parts. Through devout adherence to culture, this ancient community can recount key occurrences from centuries past and now Ile-Ife is surrounded by neighbors.
Don't forget, there was nothing like Nigeria until 1914. Don't forget again, there was nothing like all countries in Africa till 1884 Berlin Conference. 1885 was when the scramble for Africa started, and they started cutting us along boundary lines. It wasn't our decision. Our ancestors didn't decide that. So we lived together as one nation in Africa, as one black nation. We had things in common, and we had kingdoms, and we respected one another. Kingdoms will go for states that you're experiencing now. But one nation, we lived together before 1884. Before even colonization came in.
We've been coming together through trade. We've been coming together through association. I mean, through, and then again, we're coming together through migration, movement, diffusion, people moving together. And I mean, for instance, I know there's a place in Igbo land where there are some authentic Yoruba people, even from Ife, the Igbo people.
It is quite common to find people from other ethnic groups and faith in these parts of the country. Though not their ancestral home, they feel comfortable sharing some of the values from home.
We have really integrated so much with the host community, the resident community, other communities, other ethnic nationalities. We cooperate very well, and we have single association that takes care of all other ethnic groups that are living in Sokoto. Sultan is the father of Ndibo, which we awarded him, we accorded him that respect by giving him an award that as a father of Ndibo in Sokoto, because of the way he has been handling the affairs of Ndibo and other ethnic groups here in Sokoto. So we have really integrated so much with the host community here.